morning, everybody. Again, my name is Dr. Brinen. I'm an assistant professor at Drexel's College of Medicine in the Department of Psychiatry. I feel really fortunate to partner with the Peak, as well as other partners around the country in bringing you this series of webinars. Today's talk about engaging new individuals via telehealth. And so it's really a recovery-oriented cognitive therapy approach, but I think as we get into it, my brain, as I kept trying to think about how are we going to do this through telehealth, kept coming back to the same question of really, how do we, what are the basic obstacles that we face in engaging new individuals? And are those obstacles going to be that much different once we move to telehealth? So considering the challenges of engaging new individuals into treatment period, then considering challenges and opportunities posed via telehealth. The not purpose of today's workshop, it's not going to be to define or teach any of the onboarding procedures. So for me personally, I can't tell you like this is the paperwork you need to get done. And then also we can get very easily into the weeds of we have all of this paperwork we need to fill out with the individuals. How do we do all that paperwork and how do we get through it? That's sort of a different conversation. It's a conversation I've had with many of the individuals who I get to collaborate with. So the challenge, I think the challenge when we think about it is this idea of like, how do we enroll individuals into treatment overall? You know, what is the fundamental challenge of enrolling individuals into therapy whatsoever, whether it's a coordinated specialty care, outpatient, day treatment programs? What are some of the challenges that we face when we're trying to enroll people to engage in this thing that we call therapy? And granted, many of us have different ways of doing it, whether it's treatment, therapy, services, whatever you define it as. I'm going to sort of use this vague term of therapy or treatment. So the question that I'm always curious about is what is required to begin therapy? And we talked about this in some of the previous webinars. What is, if we sort of take a step back and go, what is the process of therapy overall? Really thinking about what does that involve? It involves two main things. One is an openness to connecting with another person. And I kind of feel like regardless of your theoretical orientation, thinking about therapy as a connection with another human being in the world doesn't seem to be the most outlandish concept as a basic sort of entry fee to treatment. And then a motivation to act, regardless of your theoretical orientation. On some level, treatment involves the motivation to act. And if part of the treatment is not acting, that's sort of an action in itself. So I know it's Monday morning. Please make sure you're drinking your coffee because this could get very like meta, very meta real fast. So these are sort of the basic two principles that are sort of the gatekeepers to treatment, right? Openness to connecting with another person and motivation to act. That we face is the basic challenge, which is the negative symptoms, particularly the individuals that we're going to be serving, or at least that's what the majority of this is around. And the negative symptoms, particularly the negative symptoms when we're talking about schizophrenia, are the problems with motivation and problems with connecting with other people. So those are frequently labeled as symptoms like avolition, anhedonia, things like asociality and alogia, flattened affect, all the A's, as Dr. Beck used to say to me. You know, Aaron, don't forget all the A's, right? Those are all of the different symptoms that we're talking about. But if we really think about it, they present a unique problem. It's not that the individuals that we serve don't identify a distress in them. It's that some of the symptoms would block the beginning of treatment altogether. And those are the negative symptoms. Right? So therapy follows this interesting process, right? This engagement in treatment, which is really what we're talking about today. It's like starting people off in treatment. Once you engage in treatment, there's this sort of connection and motivation, whether you're treating PTSD or OCD. or depression. There's sort of this connection and motivation moment in treatment. And then we do the therapy, right? Whatever that thing is, there's therapy. When we think about the idea of engaging people, these problems with motivation and problems with connection, they block the very engagement that we're talking about, right? So think about it. If I say, would you like to talk to me about this coordinated specialty care program that we're doing? No, I'm fine. Time with other people isn't worth it, so I'm good. Or I'll do it when I get the energy, right? So these problems with motivation block the engagement. Somebody goes, hey, we're here. I'm part of an ACT team. I'd love to engage you in this process. And they go, yeah, why try? Nothing's going to work out anyway, right? Or nobody really wants to hear what I have to say anyway. So why talk? You don't care. And so again, the basic entry into treatment is blocked. So we have to start conceptualizing from the very beginning the negative symptoms, right? Now, I think the reason we're going to focus so much on this in today's webinar is sort of it's a little simplistic that the individuals who don't have these symptoms, they're probably not the ones that you're going to struggle with the most engaging, whether they're being engaged in coordinated specialty care or anything like that. Those individuals, whether you do it through telehealth or whether you do it in person, those are the ones who are going to be like, yeah, yeah, yeah. They might argue with you and go, no, 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 the FBI really is after me. But ultimately, they're the ones who are going to say, oh, yeah, I don't feel good. I want you to fix this. And so they're going to jump in up front pretty quickly. Those are the individuals, when we're talking about the negative symptoms, they're going to be the ones that are not going to be, if you were doing this in person, they're the ones who wouldn't come to the door. They're the ones who won't return your phone call. So, or they won't come into the office, or you'll set the appointment and they won't come into the office. And so through telehealth, they're the ones who are not going to log into the Zoom. They're not going to answer the phone call. So the good thing is that one thing we have in common is phone calls. But essentially, they're the ones who we're not going to be seeing coming into treatment altogether. So we're going to think about that set of symptoms and then engage it and then come up with a way to sort of dismantle those symptoms in the beginning. So when we're talking about a volition that's problems with motivation, those are the beliefs around why try, it's not going to work out anyway. A little mistake is as bad as a complete catastrophe. And think about it. I want you to just imagine yourself needing help with something, whatever that is, or think of a time in your life when you needed help with something. And now I want you to imagine going to the person who's going to help you. And in your mind, you see it as, why try? This isn't going to work out anyway. Really tell yourself, it isn't this fleeting thing that's up here, but it's something that you feel all the way down in the pit of your pit of your stomach. And now I want you to imagine being motivated to go to that appointment, whatever the appointment is. And that's sort of where many of the individuals that we serve are going to be coming from. Also, same thing is true, this idea of conservation of energy, right? I can't do it until I get the energy. And so ultimately, I'm constantly saying, listen, I'm just not up to it yet. Anytime you're hearing that idea of like, yeah, it seems good, doc, but I'm just not ready yet. There's also this set of sort of social disinterest beliefs, right, that lead to asociality, those problems with connection. Time with other people isn't worthwhile. It's probably just better if I'm on my own. Those are some of the beliefs that individuals are going to be harboring. They're going to get in the way of connecting with another person, right? It might seem like a great idea to get on a group session or to get to go and think about joining this specialty team or ACT team or going to therapy. But if I just really think that time with other people isn't going to be worth it, I'm not going to go ahead and engage it. Right. So ultimately, you've got these two pieces that are blocking ahead of time. The next slides I'm going to go through somewhat quickly because I just want them there. So if you download the slides, you see that the beliefs lined out. Right. So there's conservation of energy. And so people remain inactive. And so then they have lowered motivation. These defeatist beliefs, this idea of why try, it's not going to work out anyway, those individuals under try. And so then they have lowered motivation because they never put in all the energy all the way through to be successful. The social disinterest ones, those individuals end up avoiding socializing and connecting with other people. And because they do that, they end up concluding that it wasn't going to be worth it in the end. So these, three beliefs alone can sort of coalesce to really make the idea of connecting and putting out energy at all being really not worth it at all. And those defeatist performance beliefs, right? Those are going to be the ones that are going to make it hard because they might engage in therapy a little bit and go, well, maybe I should try it. But then when there's a chance that they could make a mistake or there's a chance that things could work out badly, then they don't end up sticking it out. And so they might do a little bit of the action plan during the week, but they don't do all of the action plan during the week. So they don't get benefit in the end. This idea that people don't see that things are going to be enjoyable, or ultimately that they could feel spirituality or focus. They're just not going to have that feeling that they desire. So ultimately, they avoid the activity and then conclude it wasn't going to be fun anyway. So I'm always interested in this idea of, as we're thinking about engaging new people, how many people here have ever had an experience where they go in and they ask the individual questions, right? And they get all of, maybe you're enrolling somebody for the first time, you're meeting them at a hospital, wherever you go to start the process. And you get a lot of these sort of one-word answers. The yup, yup, nope, yup, nope. And then or worse than that, you get just this. And then after a while, you kind of get frustrated. Now, if you think about this idea of conserving energy, the individuals that we serve have really learned this great lesson, which is it's really easy to conserve energy. Okay. If I give you enough, if I say yes and no enough times, you're going to leave me alone. Right. Teenagers learned that a long time ago. The individuals that we serve learn it too. But there have been these times where we ultimately get frustrated and stop asking all these questions that elicit this patient mode. It's those times where we engage the person in around things like connection, where they can see themselves as connected, as valued. They're usually stuff that's very not therapy focused. In fact, many of the peers that I've been fortunate to partner with, and therapists, and case managers, they frequently will say, oh, those are the things that they said we need to knock off. We need to stop doing. And listen, I'm a cognitive therapist through and through, but I know in cognitive therapy, we oftentimes say, let's get to the agenda. Let's set the agenda. Let's get your mood check within the first 5 minutes, knock off all that chatter on the side. But some of that chatter creates this almost what we call a behavioral experiment. So you're starting to test out those beliefs around the beliefs around time with other people isn't worthwhile, the idea of I'm incapable, others are going to reject me. And we activate that almost competing set of beliefs or these competing mindsets. And when we activate it, this all of a sudden this individual comes through, right? So I use the example a lot of times if you talk about sports, and then all of a sudden the individual is sort of like an expert and can explain it to you. Or you turn to the person and go, have you made a mask? And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, this person who could barely look in the camera walks you through the steps of turning your crummy old t-shirt into a perfectly 4-layered mask, but not the bad ones, the ones that really stay on. But this is a person who wouldn't even talk to you before. And now they're walking you through this really kind of complex, detailed mask making procedure. All of this to be said that the individual is in there, and we can access this adaptive mode where we're going to get much more of this person stepping forward. Equally, we can ask a series of questions that really elicits this patient mode, this time where the individual is this set of beliefs around being disconnected, being devalued, being broken, and very much so we're going to see all of those symptoms come forward just as easily. So when we're thinking about it, and especially when we're thinking about sort of engaging this individual from the beginning, I think it's important that we recognize this is not their first, many of the individuals we serve, this is not their first rodeo. So we carry with us a series of challenges that does is not of our making, but is the making of the people who have come before us, right? So many individuals have had previous treatment, have learned lots of different lessons. Some of them, I mean, have been through ERs. Some of them have been through psychiatric hospitalizations, and they've learned a lot of lessons, right? People who dress like me are going to treat them like their patients, are going to challenge them and tell them that they have this illness that they know that they don't have. They're only going to be interested in filling out their paperwork. They're only going to be interested in following their therapy, right? So they've many individuals come with those beliefs strongly primed of why try, this person doesn't care about me anyway, they're just going to reject me, they're going to call me, they're going to say that I have this sickness that I know that I don't have. So many folks that I've served show up with these beliefs already primed, and they're kind of questioning, why do I want to go and do treatment anyway? What is this person going to do? Other individuals sort of see themselves as failed already and go, listen, I've got this. If somebody has been told enough times that they have schizophrenia or psychosis, they sort of come to you with this Humpty Dumpty schema, right? All the king's horses and all the king's men will never put me back together again. And so this idea of like, why am I going to waste time talking to you? Nothing can help me. Many of these young people sit here and go, or, young people, medium-aged people, older people come to me with this idea of, I'm broken. Things are never going to help me again. On the flip side, some people have a constellation of beliefs that are around, I'm perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with me. And I've got these really important things that I'm going to do, right? I'm an important doctor. I've invented all of this medicine that's going to cure everybody. So the first time that we see the individual really thinking that some of these external pressures might be priming some of these unhelpful beliefs. So we think we're coming in and whatever I do will be met. But in reality, this individual might be showing up highly defensive. And then we show up just trying to engage the person and getting into work, but they're already activated into this really strong patient mode. And so keeping that in mind, almost like planning like you're always going to be the underdog in a baseball game, right? Show up, prepared to be the underdog. And if all of a sudden the person's in a really good space and engages, it's easy, right? It's better to, it's better to not need it and have it than need it and not have it. So going in sort of prepared. I guess hope for the best, plan for the worst is what I was thinking about. So the strategy of enrolling a new person into treatment is really going to be, and I think this is going to be a wonderful thing, because we're going to think about how do we do this in this weird situation of telehealth. But ultimately, I think if we take this and apply this in all of our enrollings, it's going to be really helpful. And I actually know that some of the people on this call have really taken to this. And so when I talk with some of the providers who I supervise, they're frequently talking about their first sessions in much different ways than they used to. So when we're enrolling somebody, the strategy is about activating a competing set of beliefs, right? So really, we're going to talk about that idea of activating somebody and using either activity or conversation. But the things we're really talking about is the idea of that they're capable, that there is a hope for the future, and that there's a value of others, there's a value in connecting with other people. And those are sort of some of the ones that we really want to drive at, almost like we're playing whack-a-mole with beliefs. These are the beliefs that we want to hit really hard, especially every like micro behavior that we have as we're enrolling somebody. The ones that we really want to avoid activating, right? So these are sort of like the booby traps. I think of it like obscure reference. If anybody ever saw Indiana Jones in the Last Crusade, where he's trying to, he ends up stepping across this floor, but if you step on the wrong letter, it falls out from beneath you and you plummet. These are the ones that we want to like, these are the beliefs we don't want to step on by accident. So the defeatist beliefs, right? Why try? It's not going to work out anyway. If I make a little mistake, it's as bad as a complete catastrophe. So anything that we can do that would activate that idea, we want to be careful about, right? So, we're going to talk about psychoeducation, and how do we draw somebody in, and what that order might be. Psychoeducation can really set up that why try? It's not going to work out anyway piece. And so we're going to be careful about that. Same thing for social disinterest. Time with other people isn't worth it. And so if it starts feeling like talking with this person on the camera is really onerous, or talking with them by phone is really onerous, that's going to be difficult. So we want to avoid those social disinterest attitudes. Finally, we really want to focus in on being careful about anything that leads to this individual feeling like they don't belong. And remembering that the individuals we serve are going to be really sensitive to this, right? Like they almost have antennae on top of their head that seek out this idea that others are going to reject them. And so being really careful about that. And so anytime it's in us versus them, anytime this individual sees themselves as rejected, it can be priming things like suspiciousness and paranoia, anything in the self-injury category. Any of these types of behaviors any of these types of symptoms can be exacerbated when an individual sees themselves as there's me, and then there's these people who are calling me. So that brings us to the CTR protocol. We can think about, there's these 3 steps that we go through. Somebody once, it was a group that I trained in Oxnard, California. And one of the people made a really beautiful statement. He goes, this is creating the experience that the person can learn from. And I'm like, yes, I've been teaching this for 10 years, and you put it perfectly in one sentence. Thank you. So the idea about it, where we start from it, is this idea of activation, right? And so we're really going to talk about activation and using it specifically, even if we've never met the person before. And actually, especially if we've never met the person before, that's going to be a really critical thing that we're going to try to do. The next part of it is getting the aspirations. And we're going to talk today about the aspirations and making sure we're eliciting those. Aspirations are the reason to return back, right? So if you think about a business, if you're running a business, you always want to give somebody a reason to come back to you. And aspirations are the reason. The things that this individual wants, if we can establish that our whole purpose in treatment is to get this person to where they want to be going in their life, that's going to give them a reason to come back. And every time you try hooking that person in, if you're having trouble getting in connected with them, this will create the worm to put on that hook. So today, we're really going to focus on activation, which is essentially how do you get through the door, and then aspirations, how do you get it so they keep letting you through the door. So activating the adaptive mode, right? So it's this idea of strategically increasing the individual's participation and motivation. And it's those things that anytime you've talked with somebody and they just start talking like there's no reason for you to be serving them anymore, right? Essentially, they just seem like any other person you might meet on the street. So we're going to talk about the different types of activation, but that could just be doing something with somebody. It might be talking with them about, topics that are enjoyable, that are low stress, sort of that fun chit chat stuff. We're going to strategically go after that. Now, when we're trying to meet somebody, we're really thinking about targeting the beliefs around connection and this idea of the future. And so while we could sort of be vague, we really want to find these ways that we have something in common, even if it's just enjoying hearing what we talk about together. And that this idea that there's a potential that we could do these things more in the future. And also this idea that the individual has a really valuable future that they can go after. As we're doing it, when we start thinking about telehealth, if you have just a phone, If all you've got is a phone, still thinking about how can you use media to connect with the person, right? Maybe it's getting a song on, maybe it's getting your dog to bark, any of those types of things. If you have telehealth, like a Zoom or a Doxy or an Insert, the million apps that are out there now, FaceTime, think about using media pretty actively, right? So if the individual that you're calling, whether it's a young person or not young person, is they're from a certain place, right, and you've never been there, pulling it up on the map together and looking at it on the map together. If you find out that this individual likes a certain team, pulling that team up on a on an internet browser, YouTube, all of these things have lots of this stuff available for you, so you can use media pretty quickly. And so the entry in to meeting with this individual for the first time is really going to be around activation and connection, right? You can really quickly, if you feel like you have to get um, uh, this like establishing who you are, get it out of the way fast. Go, oh, I'm Aaron. I'm from this team, right, where we're just trying to help people get back to their life. But I just wanted to know, have you seen this new video of, and then pull up the video. And they go, we can get to the other stuff. There's lots of cool stuff that we could do in a little bit. But I just wanted to see first. I wanted to see if you've seen this video yet. So checking in with the person right away. Also, this is another part. This is a shout out to one of the teams in Pittsburgh. Molly was on the call, was on one of the supervisions, or a call that the Peak provided, and she said, "Listen, I'm shameless. I used my dog, right? I'll be shameless now. So if I'm meeting with somebody and going, before we get into it, I want you." Oh, Bonnie's not coming up. Before we get into it, I want you to meet my dog, right? Before we get into anything, and then have your dog there, right? Come on, up, up, right? Good girl, right? And so letting the people see that I've got my dog before you get into anything. These are the things that you can do. Just listen, if you're at home, you've got a lot of opportunities. You could say, hey, I wanted to get to know you, but can we go for a walk together? Go for the walk together, right? Do these things that you would do in good activation in person, do them online. But remember, we're trying to keep somebody from disconnecting their phone. And so doing that right away. Listen, if you're on, I don't know if Android has this, but iPhone has all of these, they're called Memojis. And so, I've engaged new individuals. Ironically, I've started 2 new cases during this time. One of them, I used Memojis, which are the Apple where you can turn your face into lots of different things. It was really successful. This guy was like, "How did you turn yourself into an octopus?" And then the funny thing is when you go like this, the octopus legs swing back and forth. I know this is not why any of us went to grad school, but if it works, use it. Also, get the individual involved. Make sure that maybe you guys are going to do something together. But the more you're going to do these things, the goal of the initial connection is that the individual returns, right? What you're basically doing is you're going fishing and you're trying to hook this person that there's a value in talking with you. So there are a number of different ways of engaging somebody, right? So there's going to be this idea of action, just doing something with somebody. That's your videos, that's your music, that's playing with the dog, showing them your dog's tricks, any of those things that you can do with the person. It doesn't require a lot of speech on their behalf. It's not a high level of engagement. Even if you go for the walk and the individual stays at home, you can show them around your neighborhood, right? Action. It doesn't require a lot of mental resources on behalf of the individual. The next one is this idea of communication priming. It's that small talk, it's enjoyable conversations. One of the things that you're not doing in communication priming is it's not this sort of like bait and switch, right? So you're not going to ask about like, oh, are you a big Billie Eilish fan? Have you heard Billie Eilish, or did you see the the Snapchat of Billie Eilish telling people that they should stay at home. When the person goes, yes, we don't switch all of a sudden go, so what is it about Billie Eilish that reminds you and connects with you, right? Like we're not trying to do this like weird bait and switch of like we're going to therapize their answer, right? Oh, why do you like, pointillist art, right? Like we're not doing that. We literally want the individual to have the experience of connecting with another person and that there's a value in that and that we have things in common. And that's actually starting to check this fundamental belief that time with other people isn't worthwhile, that I don't belong with other people. We're going to talk about simple gifts. It's this idea of providing one or two really simple interventions to help the individual, but it's really going to come pragmatically off of the experiences that they're having. But the name of the game is aspirations. What we're trying to do is capture the things that these individuals want to be doing, the things that they want to get. That's going to be the name of the game because that brings them back over and over again. They may be a little while off, right? So this is, our conversation today is talking in great detail about aspirations is sort of beyond the scope of this hour. But really, we want to get those things that they want to be doing, the things that they want to get in their life, because that's going to lead them back. So we're talking about these personal, meaningful, valued aspirations. It's these dreams, right? Our job is we're like dream catchers. Our job is to catch the dreams so that way they can hold on to them. It really creates this organization of why this individual, you remember in the beginning I said it's not their first rodeo, so they probably are trying to understand why is there any value to engaging in treatment whatsoever. Aspirations are it. If your whole process is about, I know you want to get back to school and you want to get that apartment so you can get a dog, right? If that is the whole focus of your work together, is figuring out how we get them there, then all of a sudden, you are the most important person in that young individual or in that individual's life, right? And again, aspirations are something that we applied before we were doing first episode psychosis. So this has been in CTR from the beginning. But if we really think about these things that individuals want to be doing, the things that they want to get, that's going to really orient the treatment. But then the individual sees, you only care about getting me to the life I want. You're not here to tell me that I'm ill, there's something wrong with me. It provides this internal source of energy and engagement that the individual can constantly be mulling over in their mind. Also, when it's time to get that juicy worm on the hook to get that person back on the phone, you no longer have to call and go, hey, this is Aaron from the ACT team. I was calling to see, if we can set up our next appointment. Instead, I go, hey, it's Aaron. I wanted to know, so when you get your dog, how are you going to end up, like what training approach were you thinking about doing? Give me a call back. I wanted to hear more about that. And just wanted to see, I want to make sure I'm not dropping the ball on getting you into school. So just give me a buzz so we can get back to getting you into school. If I'm an individual, I'm answering that phone call versus, hey, this is Aaron from the ACT team. It's time for your therapy session. One of them has a functional benefit to me. One of them is just another appointment I have to go to. So when we're thinking about aspirations, it's important that we're getting those personal, meaningful, valued aspirations. It's the big picture stuff. So for individuals who are really who know about SMART goals, specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, time limited, aspirations are actually not those SMART goals. Aspirations are the goals that are really far off. It's those things that we want to be doing, the things that we want to get. Right? They're really exciting. They're, get married. It might be teach my children how to cook. It might be having a house so I can have my mom over for Sunday dinner. It might be any number of these things that are just really exciting. They might be pretty far off, but they're going to have some value in motivating us. Think about the things that used to motivate us when we were younger. If it didn't motivate you when you were younger, it's not going to motivate you now. So if you think about it, making my voices go away, that's not going to be a really motivating aspiration. Sure, people want their voices to go away, But how many people, when they were 7 years old, used to say, gosh, when I grow up, I hope I can not hear my hallucinations? So what we want to find out is, once your voices go away, what would you be able to do? What would you be able to get? Same thing for steps, right? So, like, maybe get my driver's license. Sure, that's going to be good, but once it's over, I don't need to keep doing the things of wellness that I've been doing to get me to that, right? And so that's true for discharge, driver's license, anything that has a discrete ending to it is not going to be helpful for long term. It might be helpful to give me sort of evidence along the way that I'm getting better, but it's not going to have that long term motivation that we're really looking for. Same thing for far off. The ones that are really far off, and maybe even some that are improbable. Those are ones where we want to find out what would be good about that, right? What would it mean about you if you were able to do that? Once we get the meaning for those far off ones, we can meet that meaning right here, right now, and as we move toward it. So for example, if I want to become president, the reality is that the job comes open every 4 years. And as long as you're 35 years old and a naturally born citizen, anybody can be president. And so it's not my job to say you can't, but figuring out what would be good about it. If you were president, what would you be able to do? What would you be able to get? Right. So really thinking action oriented, and then we can meet that need now, and then start working. They can start working the steps to become, move toward becoming president. So we're really looking for those long-term, motivating, exciting goals. And then once we have them, the important thing is to make them really vivid. I think a lot of things that we learn in a lot of different treatments is somebody says, I want to get an apartment by myself. And the minute that we get that, they say, I want an apartment by myself, people start breaking it down. Okay, what are the steps you need to get to the apartment? And that's really overwhelming. Remember, one of the individuals says even a small mistake is as bad as a complete catastrophe. So they kind of poop out and they stop engaging. So what we want to do is really make it vivid. Well, what's your apartment going to be like? Oh man, are you going to paint? Are you not going to paint? And really making it vivid. One time I was talking with Dr. Beck on the phone, and he said to me, he goes, Aaron, you should know the breed of dog that the individual wants to have. Right. So it's that level of vividness is going to help to really motivate people. And that's the real, like, imagery is really what motivates us so much. So I want to talk a little bit about psychoeducation, right? Because some of the programs that are on the phone, psychoeducation, it can be a real central piece of the onboarding process. It can be really central to some of the treatment. It's even sort of written into some of the approaches that are out there. So a lot of people feel like it's really important, psychoeducation. And I have sort of like this very weird mixed relationship, right? So with psychoeducation. What I would say is, I think overall, when you're engaging somebody into a first episode psychosis program or an ACT team or any type of new treatment, I think instead of thinking of psychoeducation as sort of like a determined, this is what we do approach, I think instead considering it as a very specific intervention to solve a very specific problem that an individual provides to us. I think avoiding it as the opening intervention is really helpful. Because if you think about it, best case scenario, somebody goes, huh, that's neat. Worst case scenario, the individual starts avoiding you because they see you as another person trying to label them, not wanting to understand their experience, and rejecting them. And so in that, I don't really see the benefit. I think as a specific intervention, there are some people who, one, come to me and go, I'm depressed all the time. I have no motivation. I don't understand this. There's no way to understand it, or my brain's broken. So I might as well give up. Is that true, Aaron? I've been mean to my friends because I think that they're all trying to poison me. Shouldn't I, and now my brain doesn't work. Shouldn't I just kill myself because there's no benefit? For that person, I'm happy to give them psychoeducation at that point, right? I go, well, actually, there's a whole set of symptoms called the negative symptoms. These are what they are. It seems like this is what you're having. And so I give them like a ton of psychoeducation. And so there's sort of that way of, it's a real specific intervention for a specific problem. I think this sort of psychoeducation where we give them labels of this is schizophrenia, this is psychosis, this is voice hearing, I think that that can be problematic because ultimately an individual, we end up in this sort of power struggle of I don't have this, and then we're the only thing we have to respond to is, well, okay, yes, you do. That's why you were referred. And we go back and forth, and we're not moving forward anywhere in the treatment that we're doing. Interestingly, and this is again, this I'm happy to have a more in-depth conversation about this. The research does not even support any real long-term benefit. We all believe that there'll be long-term benefit, that people will take their medicine better, that people will uh, adhere to treatment better. But when they've done these sort of meta-analyses and long-term follow-ups, they've found that there isn't any improvement in treatment adherence. And then actually it can lead to social isolation, development of insight to the fact that I have this illness can lead to social isolation, depression, hopelessness, things like that. So even the research doesn't say, it's going to be hard, but yeah, this will be a good thing. The research sort of goes, maybe it's not the best. And that's my very detailed research. If you were hoping for good research analysis for the day, that was my research analysis. So I do think it's important to go, okay, well, what do I do? Right. And I think the more we can help somebody develop a functional understanding of the experiences that they're having, the better off we're ultimately going to be. Right. And so when I'm talking about functional understanding, we talked about it in the suspiciousness and paranoia webinar, right? Really helping them understand that, it seems like the more anxious you get and the more you isolate, the more you get stressed out by these things, right? So they sort of identify that there's stress and that isolating and not being around people is making me feel worse. Same thing for hallucinations. People noticing, oh, when I isolate and I stay in my room, the voices are these things I hear are louder, and when I'm around other people, these things I hear are quieter. Helping them understand functionally that when I don't sleep, I become more suspicious, and when I sleep better, I'm less suspicious. The more I worry, the better. The more I worry, the more suspicious I get. The less I worry, the better I feel. So really looking at some of these functional ways of understanding it versus this labeling way of saying it, of going, oh, that's a sign of psychosis, where people can feel really devalued. We can arm the parents with the very same information, going, it seems like when Johnny comes down for dinner and you guys are, arguing about how how next year's sports season is ever going to get everybody back on track. He's not yelling about his voices as much. They're like, yeah, but it seems like when he's up in his room feeling alone, that they're louder. Yeah. I've actually, in some of these onboarding processes, I've actually had to help parents understand really complicated symptom profiles. And the thing that makes it even harder is, not all parents. I always say few of the parents that I serve showed up because they went to grad school like I did. So it can be really difficult to sort of try to wrap your hands around things like voice hearing or grandiose delusions or an erotomanic delusion or any of these, sort of heavy hitters. And now I'm trying to do it while I'm only over the phone because they're not logging into Zoom. So I can't even see these parents. I'm only on the phone with them. And so how do you, really just slowing it down. I use a lot of metaphor. I'm a big metaphor guy. So helping them understand that in a way that they can sort of grasp onto really actively. So So when we're talking about this idea of engagement and enrollment, okay, I think take us all taking a step back because uh, it made sense that many of the teams that we're on, when we were told we need to continue enrolling young people or enrolling people into treatment, a lot of us went, "What? How am I going to be able to do that?" And so I think the take home message here is going, it makes sense that we're like, how am I going to enroll somebody over the phone? And I think the main challenge that we always faced, we're going to still face. So think about, those regular challenges that we have of enrollment. Understand that you have really good skills. One of the things that's going to be made much easier in enrolling people now um, is they're not going to have to commit to getting in the car and driving to see you. So one of the things that can be really difficult is there's a number of commitment steps along the way when I'm going for enrollment. Now, many people go out to the house, but still, I need to commit to coming down from my room. I need to commit to agreeing. Immediately, as soon as a young person or a person agrees to enroll, you can have them on the phone. You can have start the enrollment session right then and there. And they never have to say, "Oh, I'll get in the car," or "I'll get dressed so you can come over." It can all happen over the phone. I don't want to take anybody's nights away from them, but it can happen in odd hours. So since we're not having to drive out to the house, you don't have to worry about driving out to the house late at night. So, kind of doing it. So the threshold of commitment is lowered. We want to consider those symptoms that might be blocking some of the engagement. And that's going to be a really crucial piece to focus in on. And through telehealth, we want to do that. So I think one of the things to focus in on is to be practical and then be persistent. So practical, right? Someone who is not going to engage in treatment before, right? So the people that we've been chasing for 6 months to engage in treatment, the chance that all of a sudden, since we've gone to telehealth, we're going to be able to magically engage them doesn't really make much sort of horse sense. Like I can't really wrap my head around that idea. On the flip side, I think we need to be persistent. So that person who we haven't been able to engage in 6 months, let's keep trying to sort of like find the right key to get in the door, right? Try anyway. We just don't know. Maybe this lower threshold of commitment might allow us these quick ring and runs to sort of text message do these different pieces. Um, and so we just never know. There's going to be those people who look like they'll never engage in treatment, who ultimately they will. There's other ones who look like they're gangbusters to engage in treatment, and we're going to be chasing them down forever. That's sort of the message of it. I think really us getting back to the basics of why is it hard to enroll people and thinking about it more creatively. Got it. So one of the questions that came up was how do we branch somebody from just like quick, I call them ring and runs because they're these short engagements, almost like when you were a naughty child and you used to do like a ring and run, like you'd ring the doorbell and kind of run away. That's what we're going after. Quick, like there's not a lot of commitment on the individual's part, and we're just sort of ring and run to get some of their energy going. How do you go from those quick, whether it's text messages or phone calls or any of those things, to getting them into treatment? So I think there's two routes to that type of branching. The first route comes in, we start with the ring and runs, and then you just make them longer, right? So from a text message to a meme, to a what do you think about that, to a meme and a what do you think about that, to let me show you this video. So now we're on the phone and we watch the video. And ultimately, as you're building up the person's mental energy and engagement into conversation with you, at some point we're going to sort of tip over and go, man, I just love this. But once all this is over, right? The isolation, once you're done with with our team, or once you're done in treatment with me, what do you want to be doing? What do you want to get? And so we just drop it there really easily, and then individuals go, that's where we have the aspiration, right? So the key question for aspirations is sort of once this is all over, what do you want to be doing? What do you want to get? And then once we drop that in there, that begins the process of it. Whatever they say, be like, man, that sounds so cool. So what do you want to go to school for? You want to be a bioengineer? What do they do exactly? That sounds really cool. Can I help with that? that sounds really neat. I want to be a part. I want to get on board with that. And so then it really becomes this process of, can I get on board with that? And so once the person says, yeah, being like, so next week, can I call you to find out more about this bioengineering thing? So almost the initial activation is around bioengineering, not the planning, but the dreaming. Once we start doing that, we're starting the process of activity scheduling. How can we do these things now and do them later? What are the things we've got now, and how do we do those things later? And it's this slow process. That's one of the routes. That's the sort of clinician branching it over. It's sort of, we're slowly getting this person more and more sort of drawn into time with us. But it is, again, it's the idea of that you're not horrible and mean. Next level is there's a value to you. Next level there's a future because that you can help with, and then ultimately you're serving this provider is serving, getting me toward what I want to be doing. So it's this slow process of sort of getting somebody into that hot tub of treatment. That sounded really terrible. The other route is kind of going through the family, right? And I think families can really be helpful. And so in the engaging families piece of it, it's encouraging them, saying, "Oh, I wonder if Aaron knows anything about this," or "I wonder if Aaron could help out with that," or "Oh man, do you know what? I know that you're a Marvel fan. I know Aaron's a Marvel fan." Or "Do you think Aaron's a Marvel fan? We should ask him." And so ultimately, if there's a problem with things like sleep, things like frustration, things like stress, so having the families do, branch it over, whether there's a problem that we can solve as providers or an interesting thing to let the provider know. "Oh, wow, I've been really into this stuff called Navajo bread." Right? So going, "Oh man, you made Navajo bread. You should send Aaron a picture." He's like obsessed with that right now. Like I'm a stubborn person. And so I keep going after trying to engage people without sort of overstepping sort of boundaries. But until somebody says, "I do not want you to ever call me again," I always feel like the door's open for engaging that person. But that's me. If you're an individual practitioner, if you're in an agency and you have 100 other people to engage, balancing it. But understanding that many of the individuals that we serve, engagement is going to be sort of difficult for them. Ideas for clients who are home with kids and declining phone calls for that reason. I'm relentless. I love kids. So, and actually, first episode psychosis group in Danville, Pennsylvania, including the kids in. But if you engage them in, think about it. You can really create these behavioral experiments for stuff. Being like, "Oh my gosh, you're home with your kids? Oh, so many people I know are home with their kids too. Listen, let's jump on and see if I can, would you like, what if we could make it so they get through their day a little bit easier?" Doing reading and stuff like that. And then with that, though, it's not just that we're helping them with their kids. It's that we go, "Oh, wow, that was really fun. Was that more fun than you thought it was going to be? Man." And also the idea around capability. Whoa, those kids are so amazing. So, gosh, they must have an amazing, they must have an amazing dad. They must have an amazing mom, right? Whoever the parent is who's taking care of them. And so engaging them with the kids as a behavioral experiment around it. Team up in Danville. I just saw them do that, and it worked like magic. I mean, they just nailed that beautiful way, because an individual feels really capable. And I think I can speak for myself as a parent, that being a parent is a really dear piece to me. And so when I'm good, I feel great. When I feel like I'm not on the money, I feel terrible. And so it's a really good opportunity. So everybody be well, be safe out there, and thank you again for being such wonderful participants.